Mental health and wellness in not-for-profits right now on the Leadership Voice. Welcome to the Leadership Voice. I'm your host, Jay Barbuto. Today's show is about mental health and wellness best practices in the nonprofit field. Joining us are Don Reese, CEO of The Wooden Floor, and Maricela Rios-Faust, CEO of Human Options. We also have a great leadership lesson being delivered by Professor von Wagoner. We have a lot of great things coming, so let's get things started with our quote of the day. Today's quote comes from mental health writer, speaker, and advocate Katie Reed. Self-care means giving the world the best of you instead of what is left of you. Our first guest today is Don Reese. Don is CEO of The Wooden Floor and a social innovator who leverages her unique blend of experience in technology, business, education, and the arts to propel young people forward. Don was named one of the 125 most influential people in Orange County by the Orange County Register in 2024. She is a mental health advocate and serves as chair of the Santa Ana Youth Mental Health Subcommittee. Please welcome to the show, Don Reese.
Thank you, Jay. I'm just so happy to be with you again.
It's great to have you on the show so that we can talk a little bit about mental health and wellness and the challenges specifically germane to the not-for-profit industry.
I can't wait.
So let's start by talking a little bit about the Wooden Floor. Tell us about the Wooden Floor.
The Wooden Floor is a creative youth development organization, and we provide students with a supportive environment to grow over a 10-year journey. We offer them dance education combined with academics, college and career readiness, and family services. And I'll talk about family services in a moment. And it's really focused on how do we help children move forward. And since 2005, 100% of our graduates have enrolled in higher education. And so for us, that's really our ultimate goal of using the arts as a medium for student change and development. Yes, technique is really important, but it's really important that we use a holistic measure around social emotional wellness is actually a key component to our work. So we have two programs. We have our year-round program that serves 475 children after school, like I said, up to 10 years. And then we also have now two community engagement programs. One is called Dance Free Weeks. It's been around for about 35 years of our 42 years. And now we started a new one called Dance Uplifts. It's inside the Garden Grove School District. And we're now on 18 school sites this last year. And the idea behind it is using our somatics, social emotional wellness approach that we have with dance towards creating a youth development opportunity for children over a 6-week period. And we did a pre and a post test with the students, and we saw significant growth in happiness, joyfulness, looking at collaboration, working in teams, speaking up for themselves and what they care about. So that's actually another place in the county that we're looking to expand that program in North County around the schools that have less arts funding.
So why is mental health and wellness so essential at the Wooden Floor?
So I think it goes back to the family services component. That's actually been a part of our founding. We were founded by a sister of St. Joseph of Orange. And when she had a child that had any challenge, or a parent needed a challenge, we would go to the Catholic Charities and they would help us bring those resources to the children. And then it really made sense for us to have it as an essential component to the organization, where family services is really, I call it the part of the organization that keeps both the children and the families there for that tenure. Because as they have these challenges that have faced them in the community, they know that they can come to the Wooden Floor for a safe respite, someplace that they know they can bring their challenges to, and we're able to help them navigate it so that they can move forward. And so we offer one-to-one crisis counseling intervention. We navigate them to resources in the community. Say it's housing services, legal aid, food distribution. We navigate that for them. And if they need more long-term counseling, we actually have a partnership with Chapman University as well as Okapica. It's an organization that has a CalOptima grant in Orange County that they actually provide one-to-one telemed, and that started during the pandemic, to our students to make sure they have the resources they need. Usually it's about 10 to 12 weeks. And but it's really that beginning step. We call almost like tiering. First step is just that basic mentoring. I've had a student come up and say, I'm having a bad day. What's going on? Any of our staff members are trained in that level. But then it kind of ratchets it up to what's the next one. Like maybe it's more severe, where we need actually more exploration to find out what's happening with the children situation, what's going on at home, how can we help them make a call into the home, check in. And then if it's something that they really need that true counseling, we have a counselor. And we also have a half-time marriage family therapist with us who works for the Irvine School District. And then in the evening, she works for us with our parents.
And the students that you serve at the Wooden Floor, they are students that frequently don't always get a lot of these types of services.
Yes, our children are from the underserved. Typical family of 5 with the Wooden Floor is about $42,000 a year, which is very low to extremely low income for Orange County. So they would not be able to pay for the services of their dance education, their academic tutoring, their college prep, and also go to a counselor or need that. Today, the average session at a counselor is about $150 to $200 an hour. And so for that would just be cost prohibitive. And some of our families, just depending on where they may not have yet insurance. So how do they just navigate that?
And in that community, your students are probably more at risk and more prone to mental health and wellness types of challenges.
Yeah, just, the challenges children face in the community. And I think it's also how do we help the parents be able to also destigmatize the conversations around mental health. That's really the work I've been doing with the Santa Ana Youth Mental Health Subcommittee in Santa Ana, is how do we help the parents really be able to be open and talk about their own mental health challenges, and to understand that children may have a developmental, we call it the messy middle. So we serve children from elementary, middle to high school. And it's usually that middle school period where the parents are like, the children are having challenges. And we're like, that's normal. How do we help you navigate that and with your own mental health, and help them understand that there's a difference of what's the levels of, say, anxiety. Sometimes anxiety is good, right? Test taking, prep, and things like that. But it's also what's good and bad anxiety, right? And then what does it ratchet up to? Depression. And then also, you can go into suicidal ideation. Of course, we never want to get there. But we help them understand that there are levels, and what sometimes with anxiety is positive anxiety and what's negative anxiety, and what's the implications for all of that.
So what is your role as CEO, as leader of the Wooden Floor? What is your role with respect to mental health and wellness?
Well, twofold. One, it's part of our strategies because of the program model that we have. In 2018, that's what really led me to the work I'm doing with Santa Ana. We actually went to Orange County Department of Ed, Orange County Business Council, Arts Orange County, some of our funders, the foundation partners that we have, some of our supporters, and just said, blue sky, what are your thoughts on the future of children in the next 10 years? This was in 2018, pre-pandemic. And the number one issue that rose then was youth mental health. And so for me, I've started that journey where a lot of people started it in the pandemic, right? About youth mental health is just really grew. For me, it's been part of our strategies of how do we prepare the children in the organization to ensure that we provide these services, which have evolved, which I can talk about, have evolved over time to meet people where they are. And then, so it's part of our 10-year vision that we have, which is to drive social innovation, grow local impact, and uplift our community. So it's really embedded, that mental health part is really embedded in all parts of that, making sure we're driving change. So
for the Wooden Floor, it's really become mental health and wellness, it's part of the culture.
Yeah, it's part of the culture, and it's also a direct program initiative. Some of the things that I think came out of the pandemic was when the pandemic hit, because we have that 10-year journey, our focus was, wow, dance, yes, is important, and all the other services, but we need to connect with our families, make sure they feel safe, make sure they feel taken care of. They know that if anything happens during the pandemic, when we were remote at the time, they can call right in. We would actually call in ourselves for almost 6 months, making sure they were doing okay. Then that gave us a sense of like the community changed about, instead of opening up a dance class and just, starting off with attendance, they now do sit-down circles where they really do check-ins. So now we started that with the parents too, before we start a workshop or anything, just checking in with everybody. Then it also started emerging into groups. So we have a parent support group that we never had before the pandemic, because our model is really based on the children, but I felt as a leader, and I'm a mom, if I'm not feeling foundationally strong, then how am I going to be able to have that for my home and my children? So we started Parents that still is here today, and then I'm super proud that we also have a new dad support group, but that we don't call it a support group, we call it Dads Connect. And what's great about it is that we also start seeing more dads on campus. And there's a direct linkage if a dad is involved in a child's life, but also very involved in a girl's life, there's so many positive outcomes towards life and higher education and goals that they want to set. So now we have this new group for dads. And so that's a new group that's a byproduct. Even though it has a support group connection, we don't call it that because we also want to destigmatize.
So there's lots of programming and lots of approach and lots of focus on the mental health and wellness needs of students, and this extends to the families. So what do we do at the Wooden Floor to address or help or aid employees' mental health and wellness?
So that's also another byproduct, I think, of the pandemic, is when that was probably the first time for many nonprofits where we've always been really outwardly focused. Those we serve, our supporters, our community partners, and not that we weren't focusing on our staff, because we do, but is a different intention, because when the pandemic hit, we were all, we know everyone was hit with it at the same time. And I always say they're normally the firefighters that go into the fire to help with any challenge that the children or families face, and all of a sudden they're facing their own challenges. I lost 2 family members during COVID, and loss, isolation that some of our families faced. Our staff were having the same issues at home. They were only sometimes online like a couple times a week in their different departments working separately, and so we found ways to create engagement. So we worked at Pepperdine University at the time. They analyzed our culture and our engagement practices, and they actually helped us create a plan of how do we bring our culture inside and outside the Wooden Floor via Zoom, and very successful. And then when we brought we all became back in the office in 2021, we were very early. We actually worked with Chapman University, a counselor who helped us process all of that coming back as a team, and what does that mean? Now we're back with people again, and that awkwardness of the year was just very difficult. And so something that we started during this was about 3 years ago, I went to the board and I said, I think we need to take some steam off the teapot of our students, of our staff. And we have initiated rest and recharge days. We can, because our full-time staff we're 55 overall staff members, but 17 full-time. So we have that flexibility. And so we all take at least 2 days a year that we all take the same day off. It's usually after the summer session and the right before Labor Day when the new happens. We all take it off. I take it off, everybody, and the board is so supportive of it because they know how much it makes a difference to the staff. But we also have great PTO. We have an EAP program. We have everything that a corporation would have that people can utilize in order. And then for me as a leader, it's also about being vulnerable and really making sure that people know when I'm having my own day, I need a breather, I need to focus on my work that I have going on, that they know, but they also know that I'm there for them. I'm a servant leader, and so they know people are my priorities, and so they know they can come to me, or they can come to Vanessa, Rodriguez, who's our COO, or their supervisors. We've also done supervisor training to make sure, because I have to say, in this period of time, we've had all of that anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, even over these years of the pandemic within our own team. And so how do we make sure that everybody feels safe?
So it's really clear that focusing on mental health and wellness, developing better programs, developing a better culture, focusing on all of our constituents,
Yes.
whether it's students, whether it's families, whether it's our staff, our team, and for you, it's embedded into
Who I am.
who you are and what the Wooden Floor is there for.
Yeah.
So as other CEOs are thinking about what they should do for their organizations in terms of mental health and wellness attention or mental health and wellness programs or mental health and wellness culture, what are the risks of not focusing more on mental health and wellness?
Well, I think today, new generations of young people that are coming into the workforce are more demonstrative in their own mental health journeys. And so they're looking for organizations who also are open and want to talk about mental health in their organizations and provide a space for that in a professional environment, right? And to be able to bring challenge that they're facing, find empathy within the organization. It leads to, if you don't have it, it leads to higher, turnover rates, productivity within your team, team members that are out because they're facing challenges but not telling you what's going on. There's curiosity and talk. They're not focused on mission, gossiping, which we don't believe in at our organization. They make different workarounds, the person, so they're not given opportunities to maybe grow in projects and things like that because maybe someone feels like, something's off with that person. And instead of asking and finding what's going on. And so today we really focus on just really asking, like, how are you doing? What's going on? I do check-ins annually with my team, and I have a different topic every time. And during the pandemic, I need to do one again in this next summer. This summer is really focusing on, we've been through this 5 years of the pandemic. For us, we still see lingering losses from our children, remediation, behavior, other things. How are you feeling as you're really navigating this? And is there anything the organization can do for you? Is there anything I can do for you? Because if they know that I really care about them individually, they're going to really be open to share with what's going on with them.
And the CEOs that do these things, they're going to be positioning their organizations to be preferred workplaces.
Yes. And I think they're going to have not only care about the people, but you'll see the people. And, for the nonprofit, the profit in what we do is really mission oriented, right? The profit of helping more children succeed both in school and in life. That is our ultimate goal of working with our children.
I want to thank you, Dawn, for joining us on today's show. And we're going to ask you to stick around because we're going to have a panel with you and Maricela in just a little while.
Great. Thank you.
It's now time for a featured segment of the Leadership Voice. It's today's Did You Know? A recent survey by the National Council of Nonprofits found that over 50% of nonprofits reported stress and burnout as causes for workplace shortages. Nonprofit employees are also more likely to report toxic workplaces and lower work satisfaction compared to for-profit employers. It's now time for today's Leadership Countdown. On a national scale, nonprofits and their employees are more susceptible to mental health and wellness challenges than their for-profit counterparts. Today, I bring you the 3 biggest reasons why. Number 3, financial strain. 76% of nonprofits reported either stagnant or decreased funding in the past year. Number 2, increased demand. 77% of nonprofits reported increased demand for their programs and services, putting additional strain on staff. And the number 1 reason nonprofits and their employees are susceptible to mental health and wellness challenges: staff shortages. 65% of nonprofits are experiencing staffing shortages, further complicating existing workload pressure. Don't go anywhere. We have Maricela Rios-Faust in the studio right after a word from the Giles O'Malley Center for Leadership. The Bringing Learning to Work program is our way of connecting the faculty of Cal State Fullerton with the business community of Orange County and Southern California. We have over 72 training programs that are available via distance or face-to-face. And the faculty come to your company and they deliver the training to your employees.
The Bringing Learning to Work program is really fundamentally, it's leadership programming. We do diversity and emotional intelligence training. We partner with Cal State Fullerton because they had subject matter experts in these fields, and we're really fortunate and privileged to be able to do that.
Many companies can't afford training and development personnel, and so this is a great opportunity to leverage Cal State's faculty to help them develop their learning programs.
The leadership of the center and the students allow me to not only bring leadership development to my company, but allow me to interact with some amazing students who have grit, potential, and just amazing futures in front of them, and I get to take part of that. It's a wonderful feeling.
When your organization is ready to develop its talent, reach out to the Center for Leadership, and we'll help get you there. Welcome back to the Leadership Voice. Our next guest is Maricela Rios-Faust. Maricela is CEO of Human Options with 30 years of nonprofit leadership experience. A visionary advocate, Maricela is dedicated to supporting survivors and their families. She serves on several healthcare and community boards, championing safe, healthy communities and fostering brighter futures for generations to come. Please welcome to the show, Maricela Rios-Faust.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with you today.
We're really glad to have you on so that we can talk about not-for-profits and mental health and wellness and the intersection there. Let's start by talking a little bit about Human Options. Tell us about Human Options.
Yeah. Human Options has been around for 45 years here in Orange County. We were founded by a group of women who had seen that there was a great number of anxiety and depression, and so they set out to understand what that was about. And when they went and asked women in their homes, they found that many women were afraid in their own homes, and so it was creating some anxiety and depression. From that came an emergency shelter as well as a 24-hour hotline. And today we're a comprehensive domestic violence serving organization that starts from early prevention, so trying to identify domestic violence and relationship violence from its inception, so through teens and also first instances of relationship violence, while also having some emergency shelter, safe housing, emergency shelter to transitional housing, which offers counseling services, legal advocacy, case management and support. And then also having services in the community, because we know that many victims of relationship violence don't necessarily come to an emergency shelter. They want to stay as connected as possible, and so we offer services in the community, which include mental health services, legal advocacy, case management. But as an organization, we really are looking to break the intergenerational cycle of relationship violence from its inception and making sure that we do that by addressing trauma.
So it's really mental health and wellness was it was part of the genesis.
Absolutely.
Of your organization.
Absolutely. It was something that really our founder saw as a real need in this community, and it's been something that's been just integral to the part of our organization where healing is an important part of making sure that the cycle is broken. And
so programmatically, mental health and wellness is it's what your organization, or part of what your organization does.
Yeah.
And your staff, they're part of that process.
Yeah. Our staff from the very beginning, everything that we do is really about making sure that we meet the survivor where they are on their journey of healing. Whether that is someone who fled previously and is now on their own and realizing that those feelings are coming up. As an example, we had a woman who came to our program and she was sharing that every time she entered the kitchen, she became anxious and really stressed and overwhelmed and wasn't quite sure why that was happening. And as we began to work with her, we were able to unpack that every instance of abuse occurred in her kitchen. And so what was happening now that she was out of the abusive relationship is those feelings were coming up, making it really hard for her to function. And so it was those things that we really unpack for survivors and understanding where that trigger and that trauma begins to make sure that they can heal and move into a healthy lifestyle.
And every person and every family you work with is different. They have a different story and they have different needs.
Absolutely. And that's really why we really start with the survivor, right? Really focused on empathy for listening to that story and understanding it on a deeper level. There's no story that's exactly the same, but the dynamic is pretty similar, right? The dynamic is really about power and control. And you do that by debilitating and undermining somebody's self-confidence, which if you don't have self-confidence, you can't really take care of yourself, and you feel like you aren't worthy of taking care of yourself. And so the organization is really about building that self-confidence, building your mental wellness and your self-esteem back up, and giving you those connections that create the support that you need in the community.
It's so amazing how your organization provides this lifeline or this another path for families in these difficult situations, and the mental health and wellness is embedded into what's happening. So, what are the risks for your team, for your staff, from a mental health and wellness perspective?
That's a great question. For us, it's really oftentimes caregivers, right, come to the workforce as caregivers again. So many of our staff members are caregivers at home, and then they come to work and they're caregivers, and or they've experienced some type of violence in their own histories. And so they're showing up with those things, and they have an incredible amount of empathy. And if we're not careful, they become fatigued, right? It's compassion fatigue. It's hearing those stories all of the time, and that begins to weigh on you. And you take that home as if it's your burden and your story because you want to help and you want to give somebody something else to look for. So we're always really watching. We teach our staff to be trauma informed, which means you start where the survivor is, you really listen to their experience, and you try and wrap services around that. Well, it's sometimes challenging to find services or the right way to approach that because there's so many complexities. Sometimes there's housing issues, there's legal issues, the abuse is so severe, and so our staff are hearing those stories on a regular basis. And so if we don't tend to the staff person and give them an outlet, whether it is a way of connecting, a way of sharing the stories that they're hearing with their supervisors, then we're not tending to them and their self-care. And so really we encourage self-care with our staff and encourage them to get out, move around in order to be able to still then continue to do the work that we do.
In such an empathetic environment where the families that you serve, they're coming to you in tragic states in many cases, so that fatigue, we all have a capacity.
Yeah, everybody does. And so what happens if you're hearing those stories day in and day out, and you begin to sort of almost become, you have the danger of becoming desensitized to these stories, right? The danger of like thinking that, oh my gosh, the whole world is like this. And so there's that piece of like really needing to separate yourself, really needing to have empathy and connection while also not taking on those stories. And so for our staff, again, it becomes about like we can't do everything for a survivor, but we can create an empathetic environment where we can be with them on their journey of healing. And more what we're doing is engaging our survivors on how can we do that best. And what we're finding is by engaging the survivor and having them be equal partners, the survivor's empowered, our staff become more empowered because they get to see those tiny moments of progress for all of our clients, which is really heartwarming.
Now, there's the fatigue factor, but there's also the potential that sometimes negative things can be a little bit contagious. Or can you talk a little bit about that risk?
Yeah, so because of the population that we work with, right, domestic violence unfortunately affects everybody in our community in some form or fashion. And so the negative elements of that become when we have an extreme case where the abuse is so severe and the anxiety and the fear around the abusive partner coming and looking for you. Our staff carry that. And then in those cases, it's really hard to separate yourself because now if they are actively looking, and let's say they find one of our locations and they become agitated, our staff now are in fear themselves. And so if you're living in fear and you're helping someone that's in fear, and now that fear is transferred on to you, and you don't have a respite and you don't have something to do, our staff become anxious. There's a danger of them also becoming depressed. And so really tending to that, right? And then you layer on things that are happening in the external world, which is also impacting them. COVID is an example. We were having our caregivers try and support and continue to do the work, which is already challenging because of the stories they hear. You layer on a pandemic and you layer on all of this additional responsibility. Well, at home, they go home and they don't get to turn it off because they're the caregiver at home. All those things are compounded. And now it's really about teaching them to put the oxygen mask on themselves before they can continue to take care of somebody else. And that's hard. When you're a caregiver, what you want to do is you want to run in and you want to save. And so remembering to take care of yourself first is a hard concept for someone who's been caregiving their whole life.
So what are some of the best practices that you see at Human Options that you've been implementing that are really helping to helping your team and helping your staff sort of alleviate mental health challenges?
Yeah. A couple of things that first and foremost, I think connection is really important. We work in isolation in some ways because we're really working with the individual, and that story is that most important story that we're hearing. And so if we don't stay connected as an organization, you carry that and you don't have that outlet. And so we really bring our staff together once a month and have all staff meetings. And that all staff meeting is really about connecting. It's about celebrating the things that we're most proud of. It's about looking back and thinking, like, what's that tiny hope that we have? And then sharing positive things that have happened as a result of the organization. It's also about helping and encourage them to do self-care. So in which ways can you do that? Like gratitude is one way of doing that. Getting out and connecting with nature is another. But also being very mindful that self-care looks different for each individual. So giving them options and really encouraging them to take those options.
Do you find that it seems like at the beginning of each of these journeys with I want us to call them clients, but they're not clients, it's families, they're survivors. The beginning, it would seem like it always begins with a story and with a heart-wrenching kind of beginning to these. Is there like is there a celebration factor in this space?
Yeah.
And does that heal?
It does, right? So you're right. We get to see somebody at their lowest point, at the point where they've fled, they're afraid, now they're transitioning, there's uncertainty and there's components. And so our staff are really with them in those moments. And over time, what's remarkable is that when you give somebody a safe place to heal and when you give them these interventions where you're helping them with their anxiety and you're helping reconnect them to family and reconnect them to community, what blossoms is incredible. And so you get to see survivors now living into their full potential, children learning or finding their voice and speaking again for the first time. Or we had a young boy who was really agitated most of the time. He'd witnessed his dad be abusive to his mom and was angry. Every time he got angry, he'd throw things. And so our staff taught him how to take deep breaths, how to pause, how to do those things. And the most rewarding piece of that was when he taught his little sister how to do the same thing. And so when you get to see that somebody came in at their lowest point and now you see them blossoming, you see the mom blossoming and the children blossoming, that's something that really does heal.
And for the staff, do they get to see in the celebration? What does Human Options do for the staff to be able to see the impact, see the quality of the impact, and recognize it and celebrate it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that I realized a little late that we weren't doing enough of bringing those stories back to our staff. And so sometimes our hotline staff are the first ones to meet a survivor. They're the first ones to hear the deepest part of the story. And then they move through emergency shelter, or maybe they access a different type of service. And by the time that their journey with this is almost coming to a close, we may have them tell us their story and the tremendous progress that's made. Well, the person closest to the end of their journey or before they leave us, they know what's happened. They've seen all that progress, but we've had to remind ourselves to go back to the person that met them at the hotline and share. So now we share impact stories at our all of our staff meetings, and that's something that everybody gets really excited about. And what we find is they'll say, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea that she was able to make that kind of progress. Oh my gosh, that makes me so happy, because when she first came in, she was so afraid and wasn't talking to anybody. And so those are the things that we remind ourselves. That we have to remember to close the loop and say, like, look at how far this person's come in, and it started with you, right? Those are important moments.
It probably helps with their emotional capacity, and probably also helps them not internalize quite as much.
Yeah, it helps them say, like, oh, like everything's okay, right? Things are better.
That's great. So what should CEOs of not-for-profits be doing?
Yeah. Another great question. Something that is really to attend. We're asking our staff to do a whole lot of things in a very complex time, and things keep getting more complex. Right? Our survivors and clients are coming to us with much more needs, and so tending to that is important. And we're teaching our staff trauma-informed care practices, but at the same time, we also need to be doing some trauma stewardship, which is paying attention to the fact that our staff now carry that. And so we need to create these natural opportunities to tend to that and notice when our staff are overwhelmed, when our staff need a break, helping them create some connections, helping them find moments to celebrate, and encouraging them to take the time that they need to really process those things. And so that means that our supervisors have to be equipped to support them, equipped to see when something's happening. So for the CEOs, I think it's really noticing those things and not to be too hard on yourself when you miss it, but rectify, right? So find ways that your supervisors and your staff can bubble that up to you. I meet with our staff once a year. They always give great feedback. And my closing question for them is like, what's something I can do for you that would help change the work that we're doing? And I've gotten some really honest feedback, and that's been the most important to remind me that our staff need to be taken care of as well.
Oh, this is great. And I feel like we could keep going for a long time. And we're going to have you back here for our leadership panel in just a couple of minutes. So I want to thank you for joining us, and we'll stick around for that.
Thank you.
It's now time for our leadership example. Today's leadership example comes from benefitspro.com. We bring you the 15 states that offer the best funding per capita for mental wellness. Don't go anywhere. We have our leadership lesson coming right up. Welcome back. It's now time for our leadership lesson. Today's lesson will be delivered by Professor von Wagoner.
I am Dr. Phoenix van Wagoner. Welcome to today's leadership lesson. Today, we're talking about one of the most powerful predictors of innovation, inclusion, and mental well-being at work, psychological safety. So what is it? Dr. Amy Edmondson, who coined the term, defined psychological safety as a belief that you won't be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. Sounds simple, right? But ask yourself, When was the last time someone on your team disagreed with you in a meeting or admitted a mistake without fear? The truth is, many workplaces operate on silence, and that silence is costly. A 2019 study in Harvard Business Review found that employees who don't feel psychologically safe are more likely to disengage, hide errors, and experience chronic stress and anxiety. But here's the good news. Leaders can build psychological safety on purpose, and it starts with behavior. Here are 3 research-backed ways to create it. First, model fallibility. Say, I may miss something. What do you see that I might not? Admitting mistakes creates permission for others to do the same. Second, respond with curiosity, not judgment. When someone speaks up, avoid reacting with defensiveness. Instead, ask, tell me more. It keeps the door open. And third, reward speaking up, not just getting it right. Acknowledge contributions, especially when they challenge the norm or surface problems. That's courage, not troublemaking. So here's your challenge this week. In your next meeting, invite dissent or questions. Make it clear. Disagreement is not disloyalty. It's how teams grow. When people feel safe to speak, they bring their whole minds to work. And that's where leadership begins. I'm Dr. Phoenix, and this has been today's leadership lesson.
Thank you, Professor von Wagoner, for that insightful leadership lesson. We're back for our leadership panel. Dawn and Maricela, thank you so much for rejoining us.
Thank you, Jay. We look forward to being together.
Yeah, excited.
So the way this works is for our panel, I've got 4 questions, and you'll each have a chance to answer each question. The first question, Dawn will go first, and then Maricela, you'll have a chance to answer, and then each question will rotate, so we'll take turns going first.
Great.
So our first question is for Dawn. How is the not-for-profit sector particularly sensitive and at risk from a mental health and wellness perspective?
You know, I think when I think of the nonprofit sector, I think it's a wide, vast spectrum of sizes of nonprofits. So you might have that emerging nonprofit with that 1 or 2 staff members. They're everything. They're the ones that are chief cook and bottle washer, right? And then, oh, by the way, they're also dealing with the mission and serving their constituents. And then they have other pressures of fundraising. Then you have the mid-sized nonprofits where they start to build staff and teams. And so now you also have to start taking care of more people, making sure they're really taken care of. And then you have the larger nonprofits like ourselves that they're at a different place where they really can focus on that employee wellness and engagement and really focusing. So there's opportunities along the way. And I think organizations like yourself with the workshops you're doing on stress and mental health is really important because every nonprofit at any size can actually be a part of that and learn how to really develop this coping. But nonprofits, I think, are also really susceptible because there are nonprofits around dogs and other people, but it's really about people that most of the nonprofits serve. And with people, they just have lots of challenges that come into our missions. And then on top of our best efforts to be an uplifting message and of hope and opportunity, at the end of the day, there's a lot of challenges most nonprofits are dealing with because of those that we serve that have just societal challenges, employment challenges, home being unhoused, maybe something around food insecurity, and all of that comes to us, and we really try to sort it out for those families. And then it really ties to the employee that I always say if they feel well and they're strong, they can feel their best in order to serve others in our community.
Maricela, same question. How is the non-for-profit sector particularly sensitive and at risk?
So to build on what Dawn was saying, I think the part of it is really around, there's so many complex needs today. So many nonprofits are dealing with those complex needs, and there's the need far exceeds the resources that are available. And those complexities come up. So if you're a small nonprofit and you're working in that small space, you're trying to work with everything. Same with medium, same with large. You may have a little bit more resources, but now you have more programming, so you have to support that programming. one of the things is really paying attention to, as an organization, is our staff are on the front lines and they're trying to meet all of the needs, right? They came into this hopeful, they wanted to save people, they wanted to change their lives. And so now you've got somebody in front of you who not only has the issue or the issue that our mission is about, so let's say relationship violence, we're dealing with that, but now you have housing insecurity, income insecurity, food insecurity, and trying to wrap yourself around that becomes really challenging because our staff then become depleted because they can't meet all of that need. They can meet maybe one thing or two things. And so really, mental health becomes more important because what feels more hopeless than not being able to support the person that's come to you for help, right? And so we need to continue to instill that hope, and with hope, you begin to address that mental health and wellness.
Yeah, that's great. So, next question, and Maricela, you're going to go first on this one. What is the future of mental health and wellness in the non-for-profit sector?
Well, I think the future is here now, and I think we're really seeing the impact. And I think we talked about this at the recent CEO forum where we were talking about mental health and really taking care, is that these needs are coming up so quickly that there needs to be some real intentional time to take a break and real intentional time to sort of lift up and see how mental health issues are affecting not just the people we serve, but also the people that serve on our behalf, right? And so really making sure that we're tending to both. This is one of those pieces where we cannot just focus on our clients, we have to focus on our staff. And in order to focus on our staff, we need to support our middle managers. And so it really tears up, and there's a constant reflection about what's happening today that's important. I think the other piece of the future is really thinking about like what things are we putting in place that support, and then how do we keep a pulse on the changing need and the changing demographics that are coming into our programs so that we can prepare our staff for that. And so I think it's really into the future, it's building that in, it's thinking about people's strategies differently, it's thinking about how do I support you so that you can support the person that's in front of you in a way that includes more active dialogue, more active engagement with our constituents, and our constituents include our staff members.
Same question, Don. What does the future have in store for us?
Tying to Maricela too, last year when we attended the C-level mental health event that Cal State Fullerton did in the Center for Leadership, one of the statistics that Dr. Van Wagoner shared with us is that 60% of the young people that are coming out of the colleges and universities are, coming in with high anxiety, depression, and other social mental health disorders. And what are we going to do as an employer, regardless of being nonprofit or for-profit, to ensure that we're a place that helps these young adults, not children, young adults, make the transitions into a positive work environment, to create a space for them where they feel open, that they can share something that's going on with them in a professional environment, that they know that they're being taken care of. That's what the new employee today is really looking for. And then secondly with that, I think as leaders, it's that constant reflection of yourself and the vulnerability you can provide to share what's going on with you. And that's difficult for leaders, especially high-performing ones like ourselves, is that we just always want to look like we have it together, right? And at the end of the day, leadership is really about sharing your best self with who you serve. And that also is with, your staff, who you support, your board members, who you're really helping with also being role models amongst your staff, and also being with who we serve. And for us, it's both a twofold. It's the parents and the students. And nothing gives me greater joy is when a student comes to me and shares something with me and says, I just want to tell you, this is how I feel when you help me. I just want to tell you, I was in a difficult place and I may not have ever known that. But they said just me being in their life and showing positivity. I'm not always positive, right? I have my days, but that's my goal, is to really help them develop that within themselves, that they feel comfortable to come to tell me or anybody else in the organization how they feel.
Yeah, the moving forward, there's going to be such a much larger incident rate. There's going to be much larger need for mental health and wellness programs.
Right.
I think it was 20% of the workforce today experiences some type of, reports some kind of emotional, mental health, wellness kinds of concern, but 60% of the students that are graduating
today
are coming into the workforce, so the needs for mental health and wellness are going to be exponential in the future.
And it's not sector related. It's just all nonprofits and for-profits.
Yeah. Well, and it's also how do you address it without crossing the line, right? So how do you do that in a supportive way without becoming the therapist and without sort of going too deep into what they need, and how do you connect back out when there's that significant need? Yeah.
So our third question, and Dawn, you'll answer this one first. As CEOs, what do you do to promote and prioritize your own self-care?
So I have a couple things that I do that I encourage other CEOs to have as a peer support group. And Maricela is part of mine. I've known her since 2007, and we can share what's going on with our lives. We know each other really well. We have confidence and security of knowing we can share that information when we're having even via text and a phone call, Then we have a greater group of women and also other leaders in the nonprofit sector that we do have that same space built in, of that confidence. That's through other means like Fieldstone Foundation and other groups that we have, that we've learned that, you can pick up the phone call and say, hey, can you give me your idea on what's going on? But third is really, I believe in executive coaching. I've had my own executive coach, and Maricela is actually with Vance as well, Vance Caesar. And I've been with Vance since 2013, and he really helps me look at my own schedule, what I'm doing, how I'm having impact in my career. And I really focus on, I call it's a Harvard Business Review article. It's called Manage Your Energy, Not Your Time. And it really looks at 4 different factors of how you balance your energy and where you spend your time. And I can feel depleted. When I feel depleted, or I look at my calendar and I look at Nick's calendar and I say, okay, 3 weeks from now, it's going to be a rough week. I need to figure out a space to create pauses within my schedule. People always say, like, Dawn, you're always in the community, but that gives me energy. I meet great people. It gives service is part of my energy bucket for myself. But I do have my own private time, my life, my friends, my family. I say my friends and my family are my hobby, so I put an inordinate amount of time in my relationships, but I get energy from that.
What about you, Maricela? What do you do to promote and prioritize your own self-care?
Yeah, so similar to what Dawn said, I think Dawn and I have developed a great friendship over the years. And she didn't share this, but we actually have like no filter breakfast occasionally. So those are the breakfasts where we show up very much like we are just raw. And by raw, I mean like no makeup, and so no filter. And really just talking about just getting real and not knowing that we are just humans and people, and connecting on that level is really important. The CEO group that we are connected with is also a really important avenue. And then just more practically for me, what feeds me and really energizes me is learning and having the opportunity to reflect. And so I go into this space of I just need to go and hear what else is happening and get new ideas and spark that, because that brings me some energy around something else is possible, which is really, really important. And then also what may be a little silly but very practical is when I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on in the world, right? I do believe that there's a bigger purpose, and sometimes it's just something as basic as taking off my shoes and getting grounded again, and really just getting connected to the earth and getting connected and thinking there's a greater purpose, right? And for me to center myself and all of the things that I'm feeling right now, it doesn't really suit that greater purpose, and so we have a job to do, and that's really helpful for me.
Yeah. Thank you. That was great. So it's now time for the final round. This is where each of you will share one final piece of advice or pearl of wisdom for our audience. And Maricela, you will go first. Mm-hmm.
I think what I would say is to show yourself grace, right? And to really show yourself grace and not to take yourself so seriously. What we do in this world is very serious, and there's going to be high points and there's going to be low points. But the more that we can do to really show ourselves grace when we don't do it all well and we can't address all of the things, that is a way of self-care. And so it's a practice, right? It's not perfection. It's just really practice the things that you want, and know that you're getting better at it each time.
What about you, Dawn? Final word.
So, it talks about vulnerability, but it also is about your own personal accountability. And I believe it's really important to put messages out there. So through my LinkedIn posts, since I consider myself a mental health advocate, is I always end any of my mental health posts, even if it's a community event or something I'm working on with the task force or the subcommittee, is if you need help, get help, call 988. And so 988 is the National Suicide Hotline. And wherever I am today and I'm about mental health, I always share that because I never know who needs to hear that message. I might be that only person that has ever shared that with them. And if it can help one person, it will help the world.
So 988.
988.
And there you have our final word. Thank you, Dawn and Maricela, for joining us on today's show.
Thank you.
If you have a question or need advice, connect with us by email, leadership@fullerton.edu, or on Instagram @CSUF-CFL. Thank you for tuning into today's show where we shared mental health and wellness best practices. Thanks to Dawn Reese and Maricela Rios-Faust for sharing your expertise on this important topic. Thanks to Professor Phoenix von Wagoner for delivering another excellent leadership lesson. Join us each episode of The Leadership Voice where we tackle leadership challenges one show at a time. I'm Jay Barbuto, broadcasting from the Titan TV studio on the beautiful campus of Cal State Fullerton, and we'll see you next time right here on The Leadership Voice.